Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Murphy at the Upton Town Library. It's November, so that means it's Picture Book Month. Every year in November, most libraries in the country celebrate or recognize Picture Book Month. So here at the Upton Town Library, we love picture books, and we wanted to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about how our picture books are organized and how you can use them with your family. So let's get started. Picture books at our library are organized in alphabetical order by the author's last name. So when you enter the children's area, you'll see a great big wall just full of picture books under the letters R-E-A-D. We have some decorations that spell read in our children's area. Those are all picture books. In the center, there's always a seasonal shelf with some kind of seasonal topic. For the fall, we've had autumn books. Sometimes in the winter, we'll have winter books or books about snow. There might be books about birds in the spring. So always check out our seasonal shelf. For holidays that are larger that we have too many books of, sometimes we'll put a big box on the floor and label those so that you can check those picture books out as well. Like I said, our picture books are by author's last name. Some books also have special labels, so I just wanted to take a minute and show you those kind of things. So here's a copy of Old Mama Squirrel. This is part of our Autumn Books collection, so you can see there's a little sticker right there that says Autumn. We have those for all of our seasons. So there's spring, summer, winter, and fall for those. We also have special holiday ones, so you'll be able to check out those throughout the year. This one is called Blue Ridge Babies 1, 2, 3, and this is a counting book. So we put our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sticker on the spine. And that's where you can find all kind of counting books identified. Alphabet books, books that have everything to do with the alphabet, would have an ABC sticker on them. So this is a new release called I is for Immigrant. This is a good opportunity to show you a kind of picture book that really wouldn't be great at a story time, but it would be really great reading one-on-one with your child. So you can see every page has lots of pictures to talk about for each letter. So it's a great opportunity just to sit and talk about each picture, see what their thoughts are. These are really too busy to share at a story time, but they provide great points of conversation at home. So that's an ABC book. We also have biography picture books. Sometimes we put our biographies in the juvenile biography section. Sometimes they might be in a picture book form, and we think they'll get more circulation and use from families if we put them in with the picture books. So this one is about the astronaut Mae Jemison. It's called Mae Among the Stars, and it's got a little green biography sticker on the spine. So that's just an example of that. And then of course the last one we have is Walter's Wonderful Web. It's all about shapes, and it's got a shape sticker on the spine. So those are just some of the ways we single out some of the different types of picture books we have. If you're not sure where to find a picture book, you can always ask a librarian. We're happy to show you how that section works, or even maybe point out a few favorites of ours. The next thing I want to do is show you some of my favorite picture books that we've added to our collection over the past few years. So let's do that now. The first story I'd like to talk about is called Fatima's Great Outdoors. This was written by Ambreen, Tariq, illustrated by Stevie Lewis. This book was just published this past year. We added it to our collection. It's been a very popular title. It's about a little girl named Fatima Kazi. She comes from an Indian family, and she's kind of having a hard time adjusting to school. Her family just moved. She's having a hard time fitting in, doesn't feel quite like part of her school community yet, and her family decides to go on a camping trip, which seems to be a very popular American custom. So this is the story of her family. In the story, she helps set up a tent, she helps build a fire, and fend off a daddy longlegs before settling down to sleep at night. So this story I chose because it reminded me a lot of when I was camping when I was young. We camped a lot with my family, and this was kind of a new take on a camping adventure. So let me just show you a little bit about this book. Can't read the whole thing because we're going public on our YouTube page, but it'll give you a little snippet of what it's like. So here we are. Fatima and her appa stood at the curb and waited for their parents to pick them up from school. Today, they weren't going straight home. Today, the Kazi family was going camping for the first time. Camping, her father had told them over dinner in his teaching voice, was a great American pastime. The trip felt like Fatima's reward after a long, hard week. On Monday, some kids wrinkled their noses at her lunch. On Tuesday, someone in class laughed and told her it's pronounced fractions, not fractions. On Wednesday, a boy pulled on her long braid in the hallway. And on Thursday, she didn't do so well on her math quiz. So she's having a pretty hard time starting the school year. She feels a little different. Things just aren't as easy for her, maybe as at her old school. Maybe you felt that way before. Fatima smiled when her parents pulled up. The sisters piled into the car, in between pillows, blankets, and a big cardboard box filled with cooking supplies. "Wow, this is a lot of stuff," Fatima yelled. "Are we moving to the forest?" Mama asked the girls in Urdu if they were excited as she reached back to hand them warm homemade samosas. The girls nodded vigorously with jack-o'-lantern smiles. Mama's samosas always tasted extra delicious on road trips. Have you ever had a snack that's really special if you go on a road trip? For her family, it was samosas. "How about some gane?" Papa asked. Mohammed Rafi's voice rose from the car speakers and Bollywood songs spilled out from the windows. Fatima's cares melted away as they all sang along in Hindi. And that's the beginning of Fatima's Great Outdoors. So I encourage you to check out this book. It gives you a really different take on a camping pastime. It gives children windows into another culture, and it's a great book to just have discussions about with your kids. So that's Fatima's Great Outdoors by Ambreen, Tariq. The next story I want to tell you about is called Prairie Days. It's written by Patricia MacLachlan, illustrated by Misha Archer. And this is a really beautiful picture book to share one-on-one with your child. It was published in 2020. It takes place in America on a farm in the Midwest. It doesn't really say specifically where or when. Our guess is probably the Midwest, maybe in the 1940s, 1950s, such as that. And it's got beautiful, beautiful illustrations. Let me just show you some. Really colorful pictures. And it's a nostalgic look at what life was like during that time period. It just reminds me of simpler days, times that our kids maybe don't really know much about. So it's great to read a picture book about that time period, more of a historical fiction piece. So let me read a little bit of that for you. "Where I was born, there was a sky so big there was no end of it. The summer mornings were cool and the sun rose orange. Where I was born, the earth smelled of cattle and bluegrass and hyssop. When I lay down in the fields next to my farm, I could smell Mama's wild roses that grew next to the hollyhocks." You could take a look at that picture. We've got cattle in the field, the barn, the different type of car that's parked there compared to cars of nowadays. And she's just really enjoying a nice, quiet time laying in the grass. There were small towns with names we loved: Sunrise, Rattlesnake, Chugwater, and Spotted Horse. There were filling stations where Papa put gas into his old gray car, and we got drinks out of cold water lift-top tanks. So just a different way, different day and age, different ways of doing things, and it'll show kids how things were different long ago. So this is a really great picture book to share with your kids. It's called Prairie Days by Patricia MacLachlan. The next book I have is called Goodnight Veggies. This is written by Diana Murray and Zachariah Ahura. And it's all about garden veggies who are going to bed at night. And I love this story a lot because it's a rhyming story. And if you know Mrs. Murphy, rhyming stories are amongst my favorite types of picture books. This is about a community garden where you'll find potatoes closing their eyes, cabbages nodding their heads, and corn covering its ears to go to sleep. And it reminds me a lot of books that I read when I was younger called Richard's Scary Books. And if you're a fan of Richard's Scary Books, they had a character in them named Lowly Worm, and we used to always look for Lowly Worm on the pages. And this story here has this little guy, this worm with a hat and a shoe, And he's in most of the pages too, so it gave me that nice connection. So let me show you a little bit about garden veggies. There he is, sitting on his little chair, his lounge chair. Sunset in the garden. Robins in their nest. Tossing, turning veggies need to get some rest. If you can look, all the veggies have little faces on them. See if you can spot the peppers and the bunches of lettuce. They all have faces. Turnips tucked in tightly, potatoes closing eyes. Tuckered out tomatoes, humming lullabies. So a simple story, but a lot of fun because it rhymes and you can talk about gardening and try and find that worm on every page too. So that's Goodnight Veggies by Diana Murray and Zachariah Ohura. Our next book is called Book's Big Adventure. So it's a book about a book. And this was written by Adam Lehrhaupt, illustrated by Rahili Jonpour Bell. And basically it's the life cycle of a book, how a book comes into the library, how it gets used, and then what happens when it gets too old. So the description in it says, when book was new, it had many exciting adventures. But over time, it leaves the library less and less often until at last it is given away and begins its adventures again. So let me show you a little bit about that. Book was new, the cover bright and shiny, its home a prominent shelf. So in our library, when we have new picture books, they're always up on top of all the picture books. That would be a prominent shelf. Book had many adventures. In a car, at a picnic, during bedtime. Book was very happy. One day, Book was moved to a different shelf, a lower, less friendly shelf. Over time, Book's cover faded. The title grew hard to read. So maybe Book wasn't getting checked out as much. And if you look, there's a hint here about what happens in the story. It says Book's donation. So Book is going to get donated. So it tells about how it goes out less and less, and then finally, see if I can find just the right page. It says, but then Book was dropped, covered, there it lay, silent, sad. This wasn't a fun adventure. Book was about to give up when, you can see Book is all packaged up in a box again. It looks pretty sad. Suddenly, Book was chosen again, given, received. Book ends up at a book sale. And the story reminds me of the book sales we have here at the Upton Town Library twice a year with our friends of the Upton Town Library. Because our picture book collection, as well as all of our other collections, whenever we get new books, that means old books have to come off the shelves to make room for the new ones because we have just a limited amount of space. So this is a perfect story to read that tells all about what happens with Book's Big Adventure. And that's written by Adam Lehrhaupt, illustrated by Rahili Jonpour Bell. The last book I want to show you is called Rapunzel, and it's retold and illustrated by Rachel Isadora. Now this book is a little bit special because it's not in our picture book collection, it's in our nonfiction collection. And our nonfiction collection, in addition to being a place where you can find books that have all kinds of factual information, you can find all of our fairy tales, folk tales, and tall tales. So Rapunzel is just one of them. There are other different titles. Rachel Isadora has written other retellings of fairy tales. I believe we have The Princess and the Pea, we have The Fisherman and His Wife, and she's written other ones as well. But this one is about Rapunzel, and what makes it different is it is told from an African setting. So this takes place in Africa, and it's retold from the Brothers Grimm. So let me show you this story. Once there was a man and a woman who longed to have a baby. Finally, their wish was granted, and the woman came to be with child. You know who that child is? Next to their hut was a garden full of beautiful flowers and herbs. However, no one dared to go in because it belonged to a wicked sorceress. One day, the wife saw fresh Rapunzel growing in the garden and had the greatest desire to eat some. With each passing day that she couldn't have any, her desire grew and she became very ill. See the Rapunzel growing here? That's where the name of the story comes from. Her husband asked, "What ails you, dear wife?" "Oh," she answered, "if I do not get Rapunzel, I shall surely die." The man decided he must get some, no matter what. So that evening, he climbed into the garden and quickly grabbed some. The Rapunzel tasted so good that now the wife wanted even more. Once again, the husband climbed into the garden. And look who caught him. And then the story of Rapunzel goes on. I'll show you some other pages that maybe you'll recognize. So here's the one, the picture of Rapunzel in this version. So she doesn't have long golden hair, she's got long black hair. But she still says, the sorceress still yells, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." So there are very similar things and maybe some differences in the story that you'll recognize with your kids. So it's always great to read a different version and maybe contrast it with another version you know. This is called Rapunzel by Rachel Isadora. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about picture books today. You'll want to come in, visit, check out some different titles. Remember, not all picture books are meant to be read at story time. So we always have stories here that are best to be read one-on-one with your children at home, and we'd love to help you find them. So until next time, we'll see you later. Bye, everyone.